Workers are headed back into their offices. It means buildings that have been sitting vacant for quite some time are now opening back up.
Yeah, companies and business owners will be tasked at making sure the workplace is a safe place to return. And that includes, of course, having clean air to breathe. Joining us live with some tips on how to promote healthy work environments, Bruce Gilpin with Northwest Engineering Service, Inc. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you this morning.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, okay, we know you have a location in Tigard. How does your business help in making sure that buildings are going to be safe to return after being closed for weeks to even months in some cases?
There are several things that we want to look at when we bring people back into the environment that may have been vacant for a while. Things like whether or not our domestic water systems have been flushed recently to make sure there hasn't been any bacterial growth. Making sure that our air handling systems that deliver the air to our facilities are actually back up and running the way they should. It's not unlike having your car parked for 3 months. If you expected to go out there and have that thing start, you may find that you have a dead battery. You might realize you have a flat tire. So what we're going to do is go back to those systems and make sure that they're operating the way they're intended to, and that we're actually getting the ventilation air that we need into the space.
Yeah, I've had some friends whose cars have been sitting in their driveways who have had that exact problem. So I know it's a concern for everyone, and buildings too. I wouldn't have thought of that. So I know you're doing a healthy building survey. I'm sure you've had some local businesses reaching out and wanting to check over all of this stuff. So what does that survey look like? What are you looking for?
Well, we've developed what we call a 4-step plan to evaluate your air conditioning, your ventilation systems. And what we do is we come into the space and we measure all of the supply, return, and exhaust airflows. We also measure the dimensions of the space. And the reason that's important is that we're going to calculate the amount of air exchanges that we have in a space and whether or not we have the right amount of outside air coming into those spaces to help provide the fresh air needed. And then one of the last steps there we'll do is we're going to want to make sure that all the controls that are associated with those air handling systems are actually back up and running the way they should also. It wouldn't be hard to imagine that facility owners and building owners, if they have a vacant building for 3 months, that they might shut things off and they may not bring schedules back just exactly as they were before, and it might have been that they weren't correct to begin with. So we want to make sure that those systems are actually starting when they should and that they're providing the right of outside air to ventilate the spaces.
Yeah, it seems like now more than ever that's so important. We've seen those simulations of how coronavirus, how the droplets can travel, especially if you're in a building or in an enclosed space. So I guess what are some of the concerns that businesses should really be looking out for after they reopen?
Well, again, it's making sure that we do everything we can to have a safe environment, and that can range from understanding how we want to maybe clean our floors differently. It may mean that we want to install devices such as touchless faucets, automated doors, having additional cleaning services as needed. So those are all things that we want to make sure that we're thinking about, as well as our air handling systems.
Bruce, I'm curious, do you think that this pandemic is going to change the way that some businesses look at setting up their office spaces, even when you're building a building in the first place? Is this going to change the way some of our air systems are set up?
I think it might influence it. We're currently talking with a client that is looking at remodeling spaces to change the way the airflow travels through the space. It's very common in office buildings that you have supply being introduced at the ceiling and your return air, exhaust air is being removed at that ceiling level as well. They're looking at moving those returns or exhausts down to the floor level so that we really have a true top to bottom airflow pattern. And of course, that'll help make sure that whatever we have in the airstream is actually carried down low and away rather than possibly being caught in a recirculation cell and maintaining or staying in the space longer than we'd like to have it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So many things I've never thought of before.
Never thought of any of these things. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us, Bruce. Some good information there. And if people are interested in a healthy building survey, of course, we'll put a link to NWESI's website on KOIN.com.